Hello, Ment4Her viewers. Today we have Cymone Lashae. We're talking about her dreams take flight. And that's the theme for our magazine this fall. So I know certainly you're a young woman whose dreams has taken flight, and we would like to learn a little bit more about you. So tell us, who is Cymone Lashae?
For sure, that's lovely. About talking about dreams taking flight. This whole movement that I have really that I'm passionate about in regards to Of a Sound Mind Incorporated is really it's beyond what I could have ever imagined. It was birthed out of my struggles with bipolar disorder, and I was diagnosed with a laundry list of different mental health conditions. But the struggle that I had after my diagnosis kind of birthed this whole idea of a mental health organization that would support people with mental illnesses, that would create awareness for people who may not have a condition but may have a family member or a loved one or a friend that has a mental health condition. So just normalizing these conversations, whether it be around the community, with people who have lived experiences or people who are supporting or just people in the community. So that's where this all came about. That's a little bit about me. So I'll give you a little bit about me specifically. Aside from the organization, I am a creative. I've always been a creative. I like to create. Um, I like to plan. I did event planning. Those were the kind of some of the things that I wanted to do that I thought were going to be my careers. Dancing, event planning, all these other things. So my life definitely took a shift when I ended up in the hospital. I talk a lot about my crisis after I tried to take my life. I ended up in the hospital and I was super depressed. I was super depressed and I didn't know where my life was going at that point. And then I realized that that was a part of my purpose. A part of my purpose was I had to go through these things to help the next person. So that's just a little bit about me.
Wow. So a creative, right, by nature, event planning, all these other things that you
Yeah.
were into, and then you found yourself in a life crisis and you've turned that into something that you're passionate about. So, what brought you to that place where you said, you know what, I want to help other people? And then tell us a little bit about the type of people that you're often into interactions with.
For sure. So it all started one day. It was actually when Demi Lovato is my inspiration. That's a fun fact.
Okay.
For me coming out about my story when she had her overdose. She's very open. For those of you who know who Demi Lovato is, she's a pop singer,
Yep.
and
Yep.
she's very open about her struggles with mental health and also with substance abuse. So
Hmm.
when she overdosed, I saw so many different posts on social media, just like really talking down on her and saying all these horrible
Wow.
things. And so I got on Facebook. I did a Facebook Live, my first ever Facebook Live, and I got on and I started ranting about how you don't know what the next person is going through. Nobody would have ever guessed that I lived with bipolar disorder, that I take medication for bipolar disorder, and all the things. Like, people don't realize that the person next to you could be suffering, whether they're diagnosed or whether they're suffering in silence. So I went on live and I started sharing about some of the things I had been through, and I got a response that I was not expecting. I got so many responses. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for being vulnerable. And I've gone through this too. I got a lot of people who said that they have gone through this too, or they watched their children go through it, or their family member go through it. And they wanted more answers in regards to how to best support their family members and their loved ones. So I did another live stream, and from there on, I just said, there's a really large need in the community, especially in the faith-based community in the churches. There's a huge need. And I talk about some of the things that I went through after I was diagnosed with trying to deal with the church, and how that was a whole scenario in itself. And so that's really just kind of what I do is work towards spreading awareness. And in regards to the communities that I typically work with, mostly right now, I work with populations who have been diagnosed with a mental health condition or who are struggling, whether they're diagnosed or not. I do the peer led support groups, but I do hope to do more awareness events. You know, with COVID, a lot of things were backed up, but I do want to do more awareness events and things like that.
There's more to you because I remember, I connected with you and I was listening to a live and the excitement you brought to this topic. To me, I've never seen anyone bring life to it. And you were so bubbly, you were having fun on this live, and you were just, sharing your story. You went in depth, but at the same time, there was just this joy within you, and I was like, "Wow, what a personality." So, besides, of a sound mind, describe yourself a little to us. Like, what are some of the things you like to do? Because I think one of the things we have to realize is that people with a mental illness necessarily aren't any different from anyone else,
Right.
right? They have hobbies like the rest of us. And there's different levels. So,
Right.
the stigma is we have to like put that person to the side or you're not like us. But the reality is Cymone Lachey, you're probably just like any other, young, youthful, exuberant, young woman. So tell us a little bit about that. You just bring so much character in life, I think. And I was like,
Thank
wait, I need to
you.
be around her. I need a little bit of that joy.
Yes, yes, there is a lot more to me. Like I said, I am not my diagnosis. That's just a part of me. I am
Yes.
not my diagnosis. So I actually work full time for a cable company. First
Okay.
off, when in my spare time, I do a little bit of everything.
Yep.
I'm a entrepreneur. I look forward to being like a serial entrepreneur and having multiple businesses. Like I have my first business was an event planning business. Then I have a nonprofit. I'm working on some other things. I like to work honestly, but I like to do things I'm passionate about. I like to like so with the creative. Like to do graphics. That's something that I've been getting more into. I like to learn all different types of things so that I want to teach people the things that I've learned along the way, whether it has to do with like building my social media or making my graphics, starting the nonprofit. All these things are some of the things that I like to get into. I was doing choreography for a little bit of time.
Mhm.
Um, Crafting. I like all those things. I like all those things, but I am like life of the party type of girl.
I can
I
tell.
like to have a fun time. My one of my biggest passions is traveling. I like to travel a lot, so that's something I do quite often as well.
So I love what you said.
My
I
diagnosis.
am not my diagnosis. What a profound statement because I believe that, when we're talking about her dreams take flight, for women who are going to listen to this, for young women, girls who are listening to this, as Simone Lachey just said, you are not your diagnosis. There's still so much life. And that's what I was trying to bring out is that youthful exuberance and just like your joy was honestly infectious, right? Because here I was on the other side of a live and I was just like, who is this young woman? Your passion for helping those who have mental illness, who are struggling, whether, depression, suicide, whatever it is, came across where you were sharing your story. You were so, empathetic, but at the same time, I could tell that there was so much more, and I hopped onto your Instagram. I'm like, "Who is this young woman?" After the live. I wanted to know more, and just as you said, you are more than your diagnosis, and I want young women who are listening to realize that. I mean, you just said, there are other things I love to do, like, don't stop living life
Absolutely.
because of that diagnosis,
Right.
right? Because of that mental illness. Like, all of us struggle with some type of, mental blockage sometimes or mental illness. There are times where, and honestly, especially in our community, we don't talk about this a lot, but a lot of people go undiagnosed.
Right.
A lot of people have even been depressed and never knew they were depressed. I'm
Right.
one. I remember, I went through a really tough season in my life where, I mean, I was just so burnt out from work that I didn't realize what I was struggling with was depression. Because every morning I would say, I don't want to go to this job. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to get out of bed. And it took like I had overcome it. It took overcoming it and then like looking back to realize, like, wait a minute. When I hear people like yourself talk about, the side of like the symptoms and things like that, like, oh, not wanting to get out of bed,
Exactly.
as the weather changes. And then I said, wait a minute, Vanessa, you've dealt with depression. And the thing is, we stigmatize people when majority go through this, right?
Right.
We have to come to a place where we stop the stigma. We normalize these conversations that I'm not okay. Can we go there, Simone? Can we talk
Absolutely.
about that part about, I'm not okay. Recently I posted something on my Instagram. I said, when is it that we're gonna get to a place where we can talk about that openly? I'm not okay for a week. I wasn't okay for a whole week. I wasn't okay for a whole month. I wasn't okay for a whole year. I'm not okay. Because I think we've all done a disservice where we paint this picture perfect life to everyone. And I think especially when you have a platform, Simone, you have a platform of A Sound Mind. I have a platform meant for her. When you have a platform and you have a voice and people are listening to you, it's important to show the other side. So recently I've started to say, I remember posting it and I had, DMs, people saying, Vanessa, are you okay? I have, some of my wonderful Christian sisters reach out, Vanessa, with scriptures. But I responded with, I'm actually okay. I'm just normalizing saying today wasn't a good day.
Right.
Because we need to normalize it so that others who are struggling aren't stigmatized and put into this category as if they're this other.
Right. Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And that's why I really try hard, especially this year. I made it a point to try harder to show the other side. Like you'll see me
Mhm.
up there dancing
Yep.
and,
Yep.
doing all these things, all these fun things, and talking about my past experiences. But I've also made it a point when I'm not feeling okay to also post about that. I had a moment last week and I put it on my story. This is not the best time
Wow.
for me, that I'm going through these things. And even I do post every now and then when I'm not doing my best. And that's actually the time where I connect with people the most, because they say, oh, she's
Yes.
real, and oh, she's being
You're being
transparent. And
real. Yes.
right. And I can relate to what she's saying. So that's actually when I connect with people the best and the most. And that is what I always say in regards to when people ask me, you're a Christian, why hasn't God healed you, and all these things. But I still have hope and I still believe that I can be healed. But I see that in my times of brokenness and when I'm not feeling as strong, that is when I can connect with people the best. So, I mean, I'm grateful to God. Like, even through all this, I'm grateful to God that He keeps me strong and keeps me alive and keeps me going. Even throughout those moments, I lean on Him for strength. And I keep pushing. I could be so much worse. There are people so much,
Yes.
so much
Yes.
worse off. And like you said, there's levels to this, and I could be a totally different person right now, but I thank God for where He's brought me, and I thank God that He uses me, through
Right.
even through these tough times. So yeah.
So Simone, as you were talking, I was just thinking about how what you've created, the safe space for people to be inspired, to be equipped with, tools for, overcoming and coping with mental illness. It's really important because the other that we consider are just like us and they need the love, they need the support. Talk about the episode you had where you were in the ambulance.
So the live that you caught, let's talk about the live that you caught first. So that
Yes.
was my 10-year survivor. I celebrate
Wow.
everything. And like I said, life of the party. So I'm gonna celebrate. And that's also a thing because I used to, every year on my anniversary, I used to get really depressed. October is always like one of the worst months for me. I always say that. One year I just decided I'm gonna celebrate being alive instead of getting depressed about
Mm.
this day. So this year I celebrate it publicly. I usually kind of do something small by myself or do something that I like. But this year I decided to celebrate publicly. And so that was what the live was about. And so, I gave away my little gifts and I talked about my story. On October 20th, it was, what was it, 2011, 10 years ago, I had tried to take my life.
Wow.
And I remember what I think I mentioned, like the paramedic. He came and he asked me what I had did, and I wouldn't say what I did because there's such a shame associated, even after something like that. So I did it, and I can't say I immediately regretted it. I was just upset that um, it didn't work like I planned. So yeah, I ended up getting sent to the hospital, and I was in the hospital for a few days. Um, and that was a very tough time. They didn't know what was what. They couldn't tell me everything was going to be okay. It was super scary. And even in the hospital, I still had shame. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my
Wow.
family members. I didn't tell my friends. Nobody knew until they were like, we're not sure what's going to happen. So I finally called somebody. But um,
Wow.
from there, I went to the psychiatric facility, the psychiatric hospital, and I stayed there for a few more days until they could make sure that I was not a danger to myself or a danger to others.
Mhm.
Um, and I got out, and that was actually kind of a turning point for me in the hospital. I actually got a diagnosis. I actually got put on medication because for so long I knew that something was wrong, but I couldn't
Mhm.
pinpoint. I thought it was depression, but I didn't know how to go about getting diagnosed. I didn't know any of those things. So this was like a turning point. I knew, I could be connected with a therapist. I could be put on
Right.
correct medication. I could have the support system in places that I need. I was in different programs when I was in the hospital. I learned different coping skills when I was in the hospital. And I know you said you wanted me to talk about a few tips that I have
Yes.
learned. Yeah, and I learned so much. I'll start by saying mental health professionals are a gem. And I talk about that actually a little bit in the article that I'm writing. That mental health professionals are such a gem if you have the right
Right.
one. Um, they can be a life changer because they help you process different things that you have gone through, different traumas, and they assess different behaviors. A lot of times we're in toxic patterns and cycles, and we don't even realize it. And they can help you kind of see why you're doing the things you're doing, why you're dating the same people, or why you and your family have this type of relationship and you guys keep going back and forth and you guys aren't getting along. So those are the things that a mental health professional can help you with. I also sometimes talk about one of the things I learned in the hospital that was really interesting. It helps for some, doesn't help for others. It's not really a one size fits all type thing when it comes to mental health and coping, but I learned that coloring, I would get coloring books. Coloring helps my anxiety. And there's so many different mindfulness activities. That's just one that worked for me. So I'll get a coloring book and start coloring. Me personally, I like the children's books because the adult ones are a little bit much. A little coloring book. I like to use crayons. I like the way it feels in the paper. So that's
Mm.
something that I learned that helps. Um, Along the way, I've learned that boundaries is huge. Creating boundaries, whether that be with friends, family, even for yourself.
Right.
I think boundaries is a big thing as well. When you suffer with like anxiety or depression, when you're in a depression episode, I always say, I'll use this as my last one, but I always say getting outside is so important. Um, I know
Mm.
I was doing a support room, and that's why I love these peer led support rooms because we're all helping each other. Like I get
Right.
something out of it, we all get something out of it. I learn. And one thing that one of the people had said was that they go outside every day and look and take a picture of the clouds. That's how they get outside every
Mm.
day. Whether they're having a good day, a bad day, they make sure they get out and take a picture of the clouds, and that is how they get
Wow.
outside. Mm-hmm.
Simone, thank you so much. One of the tips I learned from this is find what works for you. I mean, we just went through a whole pandemic where isolation was high. for someone who's dealing with mental illness, isolation isn't usually the best thing because now they're left to their own thoughts. So I love the tips you gave about going outside. I love actually whoever that is that said, go out and take a picture. Honestly, I even want to do that. So you're working remotely, you haven't seen outside, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, why am I so groggy? Why do I feel this way? Right? Going outside, just taking a walk and maybe taking a picture. So thank you so much for those tips. Now let's talk about her dreams take flight. When you hear that word, what comes to mind?
Kind of like what I said at the beginning about me being a serial entrepreneur. And that is because I feel like I can help so many people um, do and get to places of peace, of mental health and maintaining their mental health. And also, break some generational curses within my family. And all those things. I think that is one of my biggest dreams. Like I said, I like to work, I like to do things. So I definitely want to continue creating, continue
Yeah.
creating. I have so many different ideas. I have so many different ideas. Like that's part of, if you know about bipolar, there's depressive and there's manic episodes. And the manic episodes, like they keep me going. They keep me going. I think a lot of people with bipolar are creatives for that reason. But those are some of the things that I want to do. I have, like I said, I have all these businesses already. I have other things that I want to do in regards to continuing to make the sound mind grow. I would
Right.
like an office space, a facility where we can continue having these support groups, and you have this comfortable place where you can come and just find peace and relax. I have so many ideas that can help people who live with different mental illnesses, or like I said, I want to do events where people can learn and become more aware. Um, the, the the list is endless. I just think all things mental health is what I want to do. Promoting mental wellness, that's the biggest thing for me in all that I do.
Well, Simone, we would love to have you at Men for Her because we're going to talk about that later on because I think you're a phenomenal young woman.
Thank
And as
you.
Men for Her is a non-biological community of people, processes, systems, organizations, all interacting to inspire, equip, empower, and connect women and girls to become all they're meant to be. Because we believe
Right.
that, at Men for Her, a lot of women are still not fully living out that full dream.
Right.
There's always one obstacle or another. I mean, you're a young woman who's been able to overcome those challenges, whether it's limited thinking or, a mental illness or whatever the case may be. You've been able to push through, but I still think there's still more. The world has not still seen the all of Simone Lachey, or so that we can definitely push you to that next level, see that facility come to life where women can, come to a comfortable place where they can get the therapy they need, just a place where they can even just talk and chat.
Mhm.
It's so needed. We would, love to see your dreams come to life. And that's what we're all about at Meant for Her. And just to give you a little bit, and our audience who are listening, what is her dream safe flight? This fall issue 2021, we themed it Her Dream Safe Flight. So every magazine issue has a theme. And the reason why we themed it Her Dream Safe Flight, we just went through a powerful conference that we launched in the summer of 2021
Yes.
called Her Dream Safe Flight. Women literally brought an idea and left with a blueprint of how to execute it.
Wow.
Oh, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We've had such a wonderful conversation with you. Thank you for reminding us that life is a gift. Thank you for showing us that you are more than your diagnosis. So,